The night on the orbital station was calm, quiet, and predictable. The kind of silence that made even the veterans in the Galactic Council guards loosen their grips and breathe a little easier. Deep in the research wing, where the thick glass walls reflected the stars outside, no one noticed the small silver vial sitting at the edge of a steel table. It looked unremarkable, almost delicate, nothing like the classified weapon it actually was. The label had been deliberately stripped, its real identity hidden beneath layers of coded seals. But inside that vial was something the galaxy had never truly understood, a piece of humanity's most dangerous secret. And in that silence, when no alarms were ringing, when no commanders were watching, an alien girl reached out, curious and unaware that history was about to change forever. She was young, not a soldier, not a spy, just a civilian from a distant star system who worked maintenance on the lower decks. Her kind was graceful, with pale blue skin that shimmered faintly in the low light, and wide, luminous eyes built to see in the darkness between stars. She had been assigned to clean the observation room, an empty place most of the crew avoided because it belonged to the humans, and humans made everyone uneasy. They were the newest species in the galactic community, but something about them felt unpredictable, dangerous. So when she saw the silver vial sitting alone, its surface catching the light like a shard of a star, her curiosity got the better of her. She glanced around. No one was there. The room was still. And then, with a small, innocent shrug, she picked it up and tilted it toward her lips. The liquid burned. Not like poison, but like fire wrapped in sunlight. She coughed, choking as the warmth spread through her chest, her skin glowing faintly as if the light itself was trying to break free. The empty vial clattered to the floor, rolling across the tiles as her knees buckled. She grabbed the edge of a table, gasping as something in her veins roared awake. Her species was sensitive to energy signatures, but this was nothing like she'd ever felt. It wasn't a chemical. It wasn't a drug. It was a storm, human-engineered, ancient, and deliberately hidden from the rest of the galaxy. Within seconds, the pulse of her heartbeat synced with something buried deep in the station's power grid. Lights flickered. Systems hummed. Somewhere far above, alarms triggered for the first time in years. Human soldiers appeared within minutes, their black tactical suits cutting through the soft light like blades. Their boots hit the floor in perfect rhythm, no panic in their movements. They knew exactly what that alarm meant. Only one type of serum could trigger those frequencies. And it was never meant for alien blood. The leader, a broad-shouldered man with the calm eyes of someone who had seen wars no one else spoke of, knelt beside her as she trembled. She looked at him with wide, frightened eyes, whispering a word she didn't even understand herself. "Why does it feel like the stars are breathing inside me?" But the human didn't answer her question. He only exhaled slowly, the way soldiers do when they realize a secret buried for centuries has just clawed its way to the surface. Up in the council tower, the Galactic Council's emergency line lit up like a sun going nova. The humans had always been careful about their technology, about the edges of their strength, about never revealing too much. The council thought they knew everything: human warships, human tactics, human stubbornness. But this alarm was one they had never heard before. It wasn't coded in any shared database. It wasn't shared at all. The oldest counselors, the ones who had fought wars before humans ever left their home system, stiffened when the data stream came through. They recognized it. They had hoped never to hear it again. It was the same signal that had echoed through deep space during the Black Wars, long before the Council's fleets reached their current strength. A signal that meant humanity was not what the galaxy thought it was. Back in the lab, the alien girl's body was no longer trembling. It was changing. Not in a way that was visible, but in a way that could be felt. The pulse coming off her skin grew heavier, denser, more alive. The humans surrounded her in silence, their expressions unreadable, their eyes hard with the weight of secrets too old to speak. The serum was never meant to be seen by outsiders. It was meant for soldiers born from Earth itself. A relic of a war fought so long ago the galaxy pretended it never happened. Now, flowing through alien blood, it was rewriting the rules. Her breathing slowed. Her skin glowed brighter. And then, for one terrifying moment, the The pulse inside her matched the frequency of the station's core. The entire facility shuddered like something massive was waking beneath its skin. The Council dispatched a diplomatic fleet immediately, but by the time their ships reached orbit, the humans had already sealed the station. They locked the corridors, shut down external comms, and activated protocols the galaxy didn't even know they had. It wasn't aggression. It was control, cold, precise, and absolute. The counselors screamed across encrypted frequencies, demanding explanations, but the human admiral gave none. He only said one thing: it's already awake. Across the galaxy, the ripple spread. Ancient networks long forgotten stirred. Old machines whispered in languages the Council couldn't read. Humanity had always kept something buried, something they swore they would never use again. And now, an alien girl's curiosity had forced the secret back into the light. The nurse who first found her lying on the lab floor watched in shock as the girl stood, her blue skin blazing with golden light. Her voice trembled when she spoke, but the sound of it wasn't her own anymore. It carried the same frequency as the serum, the same voice that had once made entire empires tremble. "I can hear it," she whispered. "It's not just in me, it's everywhere." The human commander's jaw tightened. That was what they feared most. The serum wasn't just power. It was a key. It was the lock that kept something older than the Council sleeping. Now that key was walking around inside someone who didn't understand what she had just opened. In orbit, the first ships began to malfunction. Not human ships, alien fleets. Council destroyers, patrol units, even diplomatic cruisers suddenly lost synchronization as their systems detected something ancient overriding their navigational arrays. The serum's signal wasn't confined to the girl's body anymore. It was spreading like a quiet storm through the galaxy's old lattice, reaching into places no one dared to go. Humanity had built those pathways long before the Council learned to crawl among the stars. And now they were awake again. The counselors demanded entry, but the humans held the line with a silence that was far more dangerous than any threat. They weren't panicking. They weren't scrambling. This was a silence of inevitability. The alien girl stood in the center of the observation deck, staring at the stars as though she could hear them whispering her name. For a moment, she looked less like a frightened civilian and more like the spark of something far greater. And the nurse watching her knew, with cold certainty, that nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. Across the stars, old stations lit up. Forgotten fleets turned their long-dead eyes toward the Council's heart. And the galaxy that had thought it understood humanity finally realized it had only ever seen the surface. The secret was out. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't something they built. It was something they had become. The alarm that shattered the silence of the orbital station wasn't one the Council recognized, but every human soldier in the facility froze the moment it began. It was deep, low, like the sound of a massive heartbeat rolling through metal walls, carrying with it a weight that made even the most seasoned officers straighten their backs. The alien girl sat on the floor of the lab, clutching her stomach as the warmth spread like liquid fire through her veins. The vial lay shattered beside her, the serum absorbed fully into her system. She had no idea that what she'd swallowed wasn't just a formula. It was something older, something locked behind layers of oaths and sealed vaults. A piece of a history humanity had never shared with the galaxy. The nurse who had rushed in was trembling as she backed against the wall, watching golden light spread slowly across the girl's skin like rivers of sunlight leaking through her veins. For a species like hers, who lived their entire lives in the cold shadows between stars, the heat of it was overwhelming. The doors slammed open and human soldiers stormed in, moving in coordinated silence. They didn't shout. They didn't question. Their steps were too precise, too rehearsed, like they'd trained their entire lives for the sound of that one alarm. Their leader, a broad figure with a scar carved deep into the side of his neck, knelt beside the girl, scanning her with a small black device. His jaw tightened as soon as he saw the readings. No explanations, no hesitation. "Lock the sector," he ordered in a low, even tone. Massive blast doors began to drop one after another, sealing the lab from the rest of the station. All comms were cut. The nurse flinched as the sound echoed through the corridor. This wasn't protocol for a medical accident. This was war-level lockdown. Something in the nurse's bones told her this was a moment she was never supposed to see. The girl's breathing became shallow, but it wasn't weakness, it was transformation. Her species wasn't built to handle human chemistry, but the serum wasn't just chemistry. It was alive, ancient, coded to human DNA in a way no one outside their species understood. It crawled through her cells, rewriting her blood, whispering to the systems buried deep in the station's architecture. A golden pulse burst from her chest in a single flash, like a wave of fire without heat. Every light in the lab flickered. Monitors died. Consoles went dark. And then, slowly, the station began to hum. Not like failing machinery, but like something old was waking up. The human soldiers stood their ground, faces hard but not surprised. The nurse watched them closely, realizing in a slow, cold dawning that this wasn't unexpected to them. They knew what this was. They had always known. In the Council's command towers orbiting above, alien officials stared in confusion as the human-controlled station fell silent to their network. None of their override codes worked. No response came from the human officers. No telemetry. No communication. Just a single, repeated signal, a low-frequency pulse echoing out into space like a drumbeat. Some of the older counselors recognized it. They had heard recordings of it once, hidden in classified archives. It was a sound older than their empire, older than the Council itself. It came from the Black War, the war that the galaxy never truly recovered from. The humans were not supposed to have that signal anymore. But they did. And now, because of a single alien girl's mistake, the entire galaxy could hear it again. The commander inside the lab placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. She flinched but didn't fight. Her glowing veins pulsed brighter, and for a brief moment the walls around them seemed to breathe. The nurse felt it through her shoes, through the floor, through her skin. It wasn't just energy. It was resonance. Something buried deep within the structure of the station, something that had been sleeping, was now listening to her heartbeat. The human soldiers exchanged looks. They didn't panic. They didn't rush. They simply began to move into positions, sealing every possible exit. Their movements weren't those of soldiers protecting a secret. They were those of guardians protecting something the rest of the galaxy must never touch. The alien girl opened her eyes, and they were no longer the soft, pale blue of her species. They were burning gold. She looked at her hands like they belonged to someone else. Her voice came out shaky, unsure, but layered beneath it was a deeper echo that didn't sound like her at all. "What's happening to me?" she whispered. The commander didn't lie. He met her gaze with cold honesty. "You drank something that wasn't meant for anyone outside of Earth," he said softly, as if repeating words he'd practiced long ago. "And now, it's awake." The nurse pressed her back against the wall, her heart hammering. She had worked with humans before. She had seen their soldiers fight, had seen their resilience, their unpredictability. But this was different. This wasn't strength they were showing. This was control. Old, calculated control. As the golden light pulsed through the lab, the nurse realized the humans weren't scared of what the alien girl had become. They were scared of what would happen when everyone else found out. Up in orbit, the Council's ships began to reposition. Dozens of alien fleets turned their sensors toward the human station, trying to pierce the blackout. But nothing they sent in could get through. Even their most advanced scans bounced off like rain on stone. Inside the Council chamber, alien leaders argued, some demanding immediate military intervention, others whispering in fear about old stories they were never supposed to repeat. Stories about how humanity had come into the galactic fold too late, or maybe exactly when they wanted to. The nurse turned her gaze back to the alien girl, who now stood shakily, the golden glow bleeding out of her skin like a halo. Her breathing steadied, but the pulse only grew louder. It wasn't just inside her anymore. It was spreading. The station's AI flickered online, but the voice that came through wasn't the AI. It was something older, something that shouldn't have existed anymore. It spoke in a language none of the aliens in the room understood. But the humans did. They understood every word. The commander's jaw tightened, and his soldiers drew closer around the girl like an ancient ritual repeating itself. The council demanded entry, but the humans ignored every call. They had sealed the station, and when humans sealed something, it stayed sealed. The nurse realized then just how deep their secrets went. The humans had hidden something under the galaxy's nose for generations, and not even the council, the most powerful organization in known space, could do anything about it. The girl gasped, clutching her chest as the golden pulse burst outward again, stronger than before, and the nurse fell to her knees as the air grew heavy, thick, almost alive. The commander turned toward his second-in-command, and his words were calm, too calm. "It's not just responding to her," he said quietly. "It's remembering." Far above, one of the council's ships tried to force a breach with a beam drill, but before it could fire, the weapon simply died. Not jammed. Not blocked. It was as if something inside its core decided to stop working. The captain of that ship would later swear it felt like the ship itself refused to go against the signal. The nurse shivered as she realized the truth. This wasn't something humans built yesterday. This was something ancient. Something that belonged to them before the council ever learned to rule. And now it was awake again, inside the body of an alien girl who had made one small mistake. A sip. One sip, and the galaxy's balance had shifted. The pulse rolling through the orbital station grew heavier with every second, vibrating through the steel bones of the structure like the echo of something buried too deep and too long. The golden light that had started as a faint shimmer beneath the alien girl's skin was no longer contained. It spilled out like liquid sunlight, flooding the sterile walls of the lab with warmth and power. Outside, the once cold corridors began to hum in unison, doors locking of their own accord, security systems bending, not failing. It wasn't a malfunction. It was obedience. The nurse pressed her back against the wall, her wide alien eyes fixed on the girl at the center of the storm. This was no longer just about a mistake. This was about a secret waking up. And the humans knew it. The soldiers surrounding the girl didn't panic or shout. Their discipline was terrifying, silent, calculated, prepared. Every step they took had purpose. Every glance at their commander was a language of its own. They had been trained for this, maybe for years, maybe for generations. Their commander's voice came low and steady, a sound that cut through the growing hum like a blade. Brace containment. Phase 1 only. No aggression. No one questioned him. That was the most chilling part. They all knew what this was. The nurse's breath caught as she realized this was not their first time facing this kind of event. The alien girl's golden glow spread into the floor, and the station's lights dimmed as if bowing to her presence. She staggered to her feet, confused and trembling. Her kind had never known power like this. She'd grown up in a society built on laws and fear of the Galactic Council, where even whispers of rebellion were crushed before they formed. Now, the power surging through her veins was rewriting the station itself, bending technology created by hundreds of species as though it had been waiting for this moment. She stared at her hands in disbelief as thin streams of golden light flowed between her fingers like threads of a living sun. "What's happening to me?" she whispered. The humans didn't answer. Their silence was its own truth. High above the station, in the dark void, alien fleets circled like vultures. Dozens of ships, from different member races of the Galactic Council, formed a tightening noose. Communications screamed across encrypted frequencies as leaders demanded answers. The Council had ruled the stars for centuries, and in all those years, they had learned one lesson about humans. They were dangerous when they were quiet. And right now, humanity was silent. The station remained sealed, its defense systems turned inward. Their ships refused all override signals from the Council. None of this was normal. None of this was protocol. It was something older. Something hidden. The nurse flinched as the girl suddenly gasped. Her body tensed as if invisible hands had seized her from the inside, and the golden pulse sharpened. It was no longer a soft glow. It was a command. Consoles across the lab sprang to life, but the language on their screens wasn't the galactic standard. It was older, jagged, and human. The humans didn't even need to translate. They knew what it said. It was the same script that had been sealed in their deepest archives, connected to a time when their species had faced extinction and forged something the rest of the galaxy had feared ever since. The commander stepped forward slowly, lowering his weapon. "She's sinking," he murmured. His soldiers' eyes hardened. They had trained for this exact phrase. The nurse didn't know what sinking meant, but judging by their faces, it wasn't something small. All across the station, systems began aligning to the girl's heartbeat. Pressure regulators shifted without orders. Security drones floated to standby mode. Massive hangar doors trembled but didn't open. The nurse could hear the rhythmic thrum beneath her feet, like the station itself was breathing with her. She'd grown up believing humans were just another species in the council. A dangerous one, yes, but still bound by the same limits as everyone else. But this wasn't about limits. This was about ownership. Humanity didn't build their technology to obey the council. They built it to obey them alone. The alien fleets outside grew restless. The council sent another demand through the encrypted channel. Their message was short and sharp: open the station or face orbital lockdown. The humans didn't respond. Their silence dragged out like a blade against glass. That was when the council made its mistake. One of their ships fired a warning shot. It didn't hit the station. It wasn't meant to. It was supposed to remind humanity who held power. But the moment the beam crossed the perimeter, something in the station's core woke up. Golden light flared from the structure like a sun igniting, and the shot disintegrated mid-space, dissolved into ash before reaching its target. The council fleets recoiled. They hadn't fired at a human defense system. They had fired at something else entirely. The nurse felt the shift in the air before she saw it. The alien girl straightened as if something unseen had just stood up inside her. Her eyes, now burning gold, reflected something vast, something she didn't understand. Her breathing slowed, and her voice dropped into a tone that wasn't hers. It was deeper, colder, older. "It remembers me," she whispered. The commander stiffened. This wasn't part of their control anymore. The serum had connected her to something the humans didn't entirely command. It was a legacy, an inheritance built into their machines, their weapons, their DNA. Something meant to wake only when humanity decided. And she had opened it accidentally. Across the fleet, alien ships began losing control of their navigation. Engines flickered. Power grids collapsed. Whole command decks froze as their systems received a golden frequency. It was subtle but unstoppable. The old networks, buried beneath centuries of galactic structure, had always belonged to humanity. The council had built their empire on top of bones they never truly understood. Now those bones were shifting beneath their feet. The commander looked at his soldiers. No panic. No confusion. Just grim resolve. "Phase 2, he said quietly. They moved like a machine built for this day. Blast doors locked tighter. Shields flared brighter. And the station, once silent, now sang with that low, endless hum. The sound of something that had been asleep for too long. The nurse clutched her chest as her heart raced. She wasn't human, but even she could feel it in her blood. The station didn't belong to the council. It never had. The alien girl's hands trembled as the light around her spread faster. She was scared, but the storm inside her didn't care. It wasn't asking for permission. It was claiming what had always been humanity's. The commander stepped closer, voice soft but heavy with centuries of weight. "What's inside you isn't new," he told her. "You didn't awaken it. It's been waiting." Her eyes widened, reflecting the burning gold around them. "Waiting? For what?" she whispered. His answer came like a hammer. For someone to make the mistake the galaxy feared the most. Above, the fleets realigned in panic, and across the galaxy, every council system trembled under the weight of the pulse. Humanity's silence was no longer passive. It was a declaration. A single sip from a silver vial had ripped the curtain off a secret buried for centuries. And now, the entire galaxy was listening to something older than their laws, older than their empire. The hum became a roar, the light flared brighter, and the council finally understood the nightmare they had spent generations trying to bury. Humanity hadn't been silent because they were weak. They had been silent because they were waiting. And now, Their secret was awake. The golden hum grew louder as the orbital station transformed around them, like a slumbering giant finally stretching after an endless sleep. Panels shifted without being touched, lighting systems synchronized with the alien girl's pulse, and the floor itself thrummed as though it was alive. It was no longer just energy flowing through the structure. It was a will, something sentient, ancient, and bound to humanity alone. The nurse, clutching the edge of the console for support, felt the air vibrate through her lungs with every breath. She had seen human ships before, had walked their sterile corridors and admired their efficiency, but she had never seen one behave like this. This wasn't a station. It was an awakening, and the humans weren't surprised. That terrified her more than the light itself. The alien girl stood in the center of the storm, trembling, her body wrapped in radiant gold. She didn't understand what she had become, but the station did. Its sensors bent toward her, automated arms folding back as though bowing to her existence. Around her, human soldiers moved like a shadowed ring, quiet, precise, and unshakable. Their commander didn't bark orders. He didn't need to. Every soldier knew exactly what to do, as if they had trained for this moment their entire lives. It was clear now that this wasn't an accident to them. It was a nightmare they had prepared for but prayed would never happen. Outside the station, the fleets of the Galactic Council drifted in tense formation. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species hovered like an iron cage around the glowing station, their captains arguing across channels, their counselors shouting into dead comm links. The humans had cut the world off from the rest of the galaxy in minutes. They had sealed every port, shut down every override, locked every transmission path with an authority the Council had believed belonged only to them. But it was never theirs. It had always been humanity's. And now they could feel that truth in every silent orbit. In the command decks of those alien ships, the panic was no longer quiet. Technicians shouted as screens glitched and died. Their systems were not failing, they were obeying something else. Navigation readouts rewrote themselves in ancient human code, the kind buried so deep in archives that most considered it legend. Some old counselors recognized it immediately, their blood running cold. It was the same language found carved into the ruins on forgotten war worlds, the signature of the Black Age. The age before the Council. The age when humanity was feared, not pitied. Inside the station, the nurse stumbled back as the alien girl gasped again, light flaring brighter. Her pulse matched the thrum of the structure perfectly now. Golden circuits spidered up the walls like veins, converging toward the central power core. The commander lifted his wrist, a small black device flashing with rapid streams of data. His face was grim, controlled. "She's reached sync level 3, he muttered. His soldiers exchanged sharp, silent looks. Level 3 wasn't containment. It was escalation. The nurse didn't understand what it meant, but she could feel it. Whatever they were dealing with was no longer inside their control. The alien girl raised a hand as if in a trance, and a wave of golden light swept across the room, shutting down every alien-made piece of equipment in an instant. But the human tech stayed on, glowing brighter, sharper, alive. The Council would later realize this was the moment they lost their grip on the situation entirely. They had built their power on the illusion that humanity had shared everything when they joined the Council. They thought the humans were just another species. They were wrong. They had only ever seen the surface. And now, the ocean beneath that surface was rising. The Council fleet reacted first with fear. One of the alien cruisers in orbit fired a controlled warning shot across the station's perimeter. A beam of blue energy meant to frighten, not damage. It never hit. The golden pulse expanded, a shimmering wave erupting from the station like a heartbeat that had been waiting centuries to be heard. The energy collided with the beam, not breaking it but unmaking it, turning it to ash in open space. The alien ship's weapons systems died on the spot. Not jammed, not hacked, silenced. And the other ships felt it too. Their weapons flickered, their engines stuttered. It was like the entire fleet was kneeling. On the station's observation deck, the Council's emergency holograms flared to life, counselors appearing in shimmering blue to confront the commander. Their faces twisted with fear behind their political masks. "What are you doing?" one shouted. You will stand down immediately. The commander didn't move. He didn't even look at them. He was staring at the alien girl, watching as the station itself seemed to bend around her. This was never ours to control, he said quietly. It's hers now. But he wasn't talking about the girl alone. He was talking about the thing she had awakened. The nurse turned toward the girl, her chest tightening. She wasn't just glowing anymore. She was the pulse now. It moved with her breath. It answered to her heartbeat. But the girl didn't look powerful. She looked terrified. I don't know what's happening, she whispered. I can feel everything. The walls, the stars, everything. Her voice trembled with the weight of something too big for her to hold. The commander stepped closer, not like a man approaching a weapon, but like someone standing at the edge of a sleeping god. That's because, he said slowly, you've touched something the galaxy swore never to wake again. The council holograms filled the room with overlapping voices, threats, accusations, desperate demands. But none of it mattered. The station wasn't listening to them. Their fleets weren't listening either. Across the orbiting ships, golden veins of light began crawling along the hulls, spreading through the circuitry, forcing their systems into silence. A fleet that could destroy entire worlds with a single command now sat frozen, helpless, bowing to something it didn't understand. The nurse's legs buckled under the weight of it all. She dropped to her knees as the hum deepened, the air growing hot and thick. It wasn't just a machine awakening. It was history itself rising from the grave. She remembered the stories her people whispered, the ones the council forbade them to speak aloud. Stories of a human fleet that once made stars burn and empires kneel. She had thought they were legends meant to scare children. But legends have roots in truth, and the truth was standing in front of her wrapped in golden light. The alien girl clutched her chest, her voice cracking. I didn't mean to, she said softly, her body trembling under the power she couldn't control. I didn't mean to do any of this. But the commander's voice came firm, cold as iron. It doesn't matter. Once the flame wakes, it doesn't ask for permission. It only remembers. His words sank into the room like a blade. The nurse's blood ran cold at the way he said remembers, as if the station wasn't following commands, but recalling an oath forged long before anyone alive was born. Outside, the council fleets began to break formation, their systems failing one after another as the golden pulse spread like a tide through space. The galactic order that had held for centuries trembled, and every commander out there felt it in their bones. They were no longer in control. The council's holograms flickered and died as the signal overrode their frequencies completely, leaving only silence behind. For the first time, the nurse saw fear in the counselor's eyes. The commander turned his gaze to the alien girl as the golden light wrapped around her like a crown she had never wanted. He whispered the words like a confession. This was always going to happen. And the station answered him with a low, eternal hum that echoed into the void. The flame was awake, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The pulse of the awakened flame no longer felt like it belonged to the station alone. It was in the walls, the floor, the human's veins, and now it was pouring into the stars beyond. Golden threads of light raced through the old lattice of forgotten networks buried under centuries of Galactic Council control. Systems that no one remembered how to access suddenly lit up, ancient relays opening like iron eyes shaking off centuries of dust. The alien fleets that had once surrounded the human station as a show of power now drifted in frightened silence, their weapons turned useless, their engines bending to an authority no one had expected to rise again. For the first time in generations, the Council wasn't the strongest presence in orbit. Humanity was. And they hadn't fired a single shot. Inside the station, the golden glow washed through every corridor like a living tide. Security bulkheads that had been designed to resist planetary sieges opened and closed not at command but in response to the girl's heartbeat. Her body, still trembling, had become the living anchor of the awakening. The nurse stood frozen near the edge of the lab, her chest rising and falling in ragged breaths. She could feel the heat of the energy, not burning her, but pressing against her like the presence of something too big to comprehend. This wasn't just technology. This was history walking back into the present. The commander stepped forward slowly, every movement deliberate, the weight in his eyes revealing that he had trained for this exact moment. Not for war, but for revelation. The alien girl's glowing hands tightened around her chest, as though she was trying to contain the storm rising inside her. She didn't want this. She hadn't asked for it. But the flame didn't care. The humans had always said it wasn't a weapon. It was a will. A memory. A promise etched into the bones of their civilization before the council was ever born. Her breathing slowed as golden patterns spread from her skin into the air like constellations being drawn in real time. The nurse took a hesitant step closer, drawn by a force she didn't understand. It was beautiful, terrifying, and impossible all at once. And the humans around her weren't surprised. They were respectful. This was their secret, and she had stumbled right into its center. Above them, alien admirals on their trembling ships whispered frantic orders, but nothing worked. Their fleets weren't just being blocked, they were being silenced. Navigation AI stopped responding. Communication relays began broadcasting the golden frequency. The Council's Grand Armada, which had enforced galactic law for centuries, was being rewritten by something they couldn't control. Panic spread through command decks as they realized the truth. This wasn't a battle. It was a takeover without war. And it was happening faster than any fleet could respond. The nurse stumbled as the hum deepened again. The girl's voice cracked into the stillness, soft but heavy with something not entirely hers. "It's talking to me." Her wide golden eyes flicked toward the commander, her lips trembling. "It's asking me why I'm not human." The commander's jaw clenched, and for a heartbeat, the mask of military control faltered. He had known this might happen. That if the serum ever touched alien blood, the flame wouldn't just awaken, it would question. He knelt slowly in front of her, his voice quiet and steady, the way a man speaks to a storm. "Because you weren't meant to carry it," he said. "But now it sees you anyway. And it doesn't forget." The nurse's breath caught in her throat. She had heard stories whispered in the dark, legends of a time when humanity was not just a species but a storm that swept through the stars, reshaping everything in its path. They were old stories. Dangerous stories. Stories the Council had buried under their endless rule. But now, looking at the golden light that wrapped the station like a crown, she realized those weren't stories at all. They were warnings. The Council tried one last act of control. A battle group of dreadnoughts moved into firing position, their captains overriding every safety system they had left. They aimed their planet-killer beams at the station, fully prepared to erase it, and everyone on it, from existence. But the moment they powered up their cannons, the ships froze mid-charge. Their energy core shut down like candles snuffed by an unseen hand. A golden flare erupted from the station, but it wasn't an attack. It was a command. Every ship in orbit turned its bow, not toward the station, but toward the Council's own flagship at the edge of the formation. For the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Council fleet was no longer under Council command. Inside the Council chamber light-years away, alien leaders stared at the feeds in horror as their most powerful armada bent to a force they didn't even understand. This wasn't some hidden fleet or secret human weapon. This was their own systems answering to something ancient. The commander of the human station didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply watched it unfold with the eyes of someone who had known this day would come eventually. "We told them never to fire," he whispered to his second-in-command. "We told them not to wake it." The alien girl fell to her knees, gripping her head as the golden energy pulsed through her like a heartbeat the size of a star. "It's so loud," she gasped, her voice echoing through the lab like a living frequency. "I can feel them all, the ships, the weapons, the stars. It's like they're breathing with me." The commander knelt beside her, his expression calm but heavy. "That's not them breathing," he said softly. "That's the flame remembering who it belongs to." The nurse felt the weight of those words like a blade against her spine. The Council had spent centuries crafting the myth that humanity was just another participant in the galactic order, a species that had arrived late to the stars. But it was a lie. Humanity had been here first, not as rulers, but as the architects of something the rest of the galaxy had built on without understanding. The Council had been standing on humanity's bones the entire time. And now, those bones were moving. The Council's flagship tried to counter-command the fleets, but their orders dissolved in static. Instead, the ships turned in unison, engines aligning with the station's golden pulse. It was beautiful and terrifying. An entire fleet of alien dreadnoughts, a force meant to crush rebellion anywhere in the galaxy, was now bowing to a single heartbeat. And at the center of it all was a girl who hadn't meant to change anything. The humans didn't cheer. They stood in silence, a quiet, unshakable reverence filling the room. The alien girl finally looked up, her golden eyes glowing brighter than the station lights. "Why is it listening to me?" she whispered. The commander stared at her for a long moment. "Because it's not just listening to you," he said. "It's listening to what's inside you. You drank something built to wake an empire." In the black between stars, ancient signal buoys flickered to life for the first time in centuries. A long-buried human network, the Flame Lattice, spread its golden web through forgotten channels, bypassing every council wall. Planets across the galaxy began to receive the signal. Civilizations that had never feared anyone began to look up at the sky in silence as the golden emblem of humanity appeared in their orbit. It was not a threat. It was a memory returning home. The nurse sank to the floor, hands shaking. She had lived her entire life under the weight of the Council's control. Now she was watching it unravel in real time. Not through violence. Not through fleets or rebellion. Through one human secret finally standing up. The commander rose to his feet, his eyes fixed on the stars beyond the viewport. His voice came out quiet but final, the way a door sounds when it closes on an old age. "They've forgotten who built the foundation they stand on," he said. "But the flame doesn't forget." Above them, the fleets knelt. The Council screamed into the void. And the galaxy, for the first time in generations, remembered humanity. The silence that followed was not truly silent. It was heavy, breathing, alive. It vibrated through the steel ribs of the station and the hulls of the ships in orbit, a low golden hum that seemed to echo from the bones of the galaxy itself. The Council's armada hovered motionless above the human station, a fleet that had once represented unstoppable power now bending under an ancient authority it had forgotten existed. Across the stars, the signal raced like a wildfire through hidden networks the Council never knew were there. Entire systems froze as the golden emblem pulsed into the void, a mark not of conquest, but of ownership. Humanity had not reclaimed the galaxy with fire. They had simply reminded it who had shaped it in the first place. Inside the lab, the alien girl sat slumped on the floor, trembling as the golden light coiled and uncoiled around her like a living storm. Her skin glowed like the surface of a sun, and the pulse inside her chest beat in perfect rhythm with the station, the ships, and now the stars beyond. The nurse had sunk to her knees, her hands pressed against the ground as if trying to stop herself from being swallowed by the weight of it all. It wasn't fear anymore. It was something deeper. Something primal. As if every species in the galaxy had, buried in their genetic memory, an instinct to kneel before this sound. The commander stood a few paces away, his broad silhouette outlined by the soft golden flare that filled the room. He wasn't shocked. He wasn't afraid. His face carried something far heavier, the calm acceptance of a man who had always known this day was inevitable. The alien girl clutched her head, her voice cracking through the stillness. "It's too much," she whispered, every word trembling with the pulse she couldn't control. "I can hear everything. The fleets, the systems, the stars. They're not just listening, they're obeying me." Her eyes widened as she looked at her glowing hands. "Why me? I'm not even human." Her words were almost a plea. The commander crouched beside her, his voice low and steady, the kind of voice used when speaking to something fragile yet divine. "Because the flame doesn't choose the way we do. It doesn't care about blood. It listens to resonance. And right now, it has found its voice in you." Above them, alien admirals shouted into dead channels. Command bridges flickered under the glow of their own systems betraying them. Weapon arrays pointed not at humanity, but at their own flagships. Their navigation drives spun down one by one as the golden signal wrapped around their networks like a noose. For the first time, the Galactic Council was truly powerless. Their strength had never been their own, It had been borrowed from infrastructure built long before their first worlds learned to stand. And now the architects of that foundation had returned. The nurse forced herself to stand, her legs shaking. The golden pulse made her skin crawl and her lungs ache, but she couldn't look away. "What is this?" she asked, her voice breaking. "How can something do this without a single weapon?" The commander didn't look at her. His eyes stayed on the girl. "Because this isn't a weapon," he said quietly. "This is the key that built the galaxy you live in. Long before the Council. Long before the borders. Humanity never truly gave it away. They only buried it. And she's just turned the lock." The alien girl's breathing steadied, not because the storm inside her calmed, but because she began to understand it. She felt the pull from the fleets above, from the old relays far beyond this system, from stations hidden in black space. They weren't just machines. They were alive in their own way, dormant, waiting. And now, for the first time in centuries, they were listening to a voice again. The voice of the flame. Her voice. She didn't know how to control it. But the flame didn't need control. It was control. In the council chamber light years away, chaos reigned. Alien leaders screamed over one another, terrified to admit what they all knew. The council's power was not built on strength. It was built on the illusion that humanity had nothing left. But they did. Humanity had built the pathways that connected the stars, the lattice that powered the fleets, the black systems that kept every corner of the galaxy alive. The council had only inherited the house. They had forgotten the builders. Now, the builders had spoken again. And the house no longer listened to its tenants. One alien fleet captain tried to override the golden signal with a last, desperate failsafe. His ship had once crushed entire rebellions in minutes. But the moment his fingers hit the console, the systems around him froze. Golden veins spread across every display, and the emblem burned into his vision. A single human silhouette wreathed in flame. The lights in his ship dimmed. His voice cracked in fear. "It's not hacking us," he whispered. "It's commanding us." Back on the station, the girl rose unsteadily to her feet, her eyes blazing like twin stars. The nurse stumbled back, overwhelmed by the pressure in the air. The commander didn't move. He simply watched, the way a soldier watches a storm that he knows cannot be stopped. The girl clenched her fists, and the entire fleet outside realigned, as if the stars themselves bowed their heads. She let out a breath that seemed to shake the entire structure. "I can make them move," she whispered, almost horrified. "They'll do anything I think." "That's why we hid it," the commander said softly, almost like a confession. "Not because it was weak, but because it was too strong. The flame isn't just power, it's obedience written into the galaxy itself. And if the wrong hands ever grasped it," he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The nurse already understood. This wasn't a weapon that destroyed. It was one that ruled. It could bend the galaxy without firing a single shot. The council, finally realizing the scale of the disaster, tried one last act of defiance. Their flagship powered up its engines, aiming to flee and rally other systems. But the moment it accelerated, it froze. The engines reversed course on their own. The ship turned its guns inward, not at the humans, but at itself. The council's last show of dominance shattered in silence. The fleets had chosen. Or rather, they had remembered. The girl pressed a trembling hand to the viewport, her breath fogging the glass as she looked out at the fleet bending to her will. Her voice shook with a mix of awe and terror. "This isn't mine," she whispered. "This power isn't supposed to be mine." The commander stood beside her, his voice firm but calm. "No," he said. "But the galaxy doesn't care who it belongs to anymore. The flame has no loyalty to the council. It only answers to its makers. And you drank its voice." The nurse stared at the girl, her heart pounding. For the first time, she understood the depth of the council's fear of humanity. Not their ships, not their soldiers, but the quiet, patient way they had carried something this colossal in silence for generations. The council had believed themselves rulers of the stars. But they had always been living in the shadow of a sleeping giant. Now, the giant was awake. Far beyond, in the dark void where no one dared travel, ancient outposts opened their eyes. Forgotten planetary cores flickered to life. The golden signal raced faster than light, linking every corner of the galaxy to its origin point, the humans. And as the fleet outside knelt in perfect silence, the commander whispered words meant only for himself. "They thought we joined their council," he murmured. "But we were only waiting." The alien girl turned from the stars to face him, fear still trembling in her golden gaze. "What happens now?" she asked. The commander's jaw set as the golden light bathed them all, warm and merciless. "Now," he said slowly, "the galaxy remembers. And nothing will ever be the same again." The hum rose one last time, not like a machine but like a chorus. Outside, 1,000 ships drifted in perfect unison, their guns lowered, their engines silent. The council was broken. The flame was awake. And humanity, quiet, patient, terrifying humanity, had reclaimed what it had never truly lost. If you enjoyed this HFY sci-fi story, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more tales of humanity's rise among the stars.